wasn't running away from him. His advisors assured him she was running towards something else. He failed to see the difference. That very night he called together his council of generals, oracles, and favorite concubines alike, and in the soft light of olive oil lamps hung like captured stars, all scattered off the gold and polished bronze of others' fallen kingdoms, in that soft light of the summer palace, among the purple richness of overstuffed linen pillows and the violet luxury of thick nap woolen rugs, amid all that softness and wealth, he raged at them with harsh words and blasphemies against all his blessings. And he called for poison, and he called for fire. He summoned his assassins, and he marshaled his armies. His scribes sent thousands of letters of urgent demand pressed in fired clay and carried by an army of royal runners to every palace, town, fort, ship, city, harbor, hut, and outpost that owed this mighty king allegiance. And later that night, turning into morning, with half his kingdom in motion towards spinning the other half into still more terrible motion, even as the first growing rays of the rising sun skittered across polished floors into the throne room, driving the long night shadows before it, even then he turned to darker arts than whip and sword and sinew. His scryers from far eastern lands where the sun resides roved the hidden corners of minds and realms not his own. His priests brought from the madness of the western forest pulled prophecy from ashes, birds, beasts, and bones, while the fur-clad wizards of the northern steppes whispered low in strange tongues to their falcons before releasing them to disappear into widening gyres and thin air. The impossibly tall, spindly sorcerers from the south sung songs of seizing, chants of chains and binding, wove cruel, rhythmic spells as their death-ash gray tattoos writhed across their sun-bronzed skin in time to the terrible music of their magic. And still he raged with cold darkness despite the light of the full day's sun. And as the sun began to fail for the second time since she left him that message, that terrible message imploring him to let her and her dreams go, that message that he didn't even finish before he had the poor messenger put to death and started down this path of boiling blood, as the sun set for the second time since she'd walked away from him, his aides and concerned consorts begged him to find relief in wine, distraction in his court, and peace and long overdue sleep. The king instead called for braziers heaped with spicy incense and bonfires built of sweet woods. He heard the reports of his generals with impatience and called for his scribes to send messages of entreaty to his brother kings and the fathers of his many wives, along with wagons full of bronze ingots and more than enough slaves to unload them. He sent his agents with barrels full of barley, jugs of wine, sacks of the horsemen smoking herbs, and just a little gold dust with splendid promises of so much more to the axes, swords, and maces that were ever for horrible hire on the island's 2 days' sail. And the nights began to open with the blur of birdsong and morning's glower in the courtyard. And still he raged with everything he had against the losing of a thing that was never his. And his terrified counselors, his weeping concubines, all his besotted, anxious children begged the little sense left in him to escape this madness into the sanctuary of forgetful sleep. But now, with all the gears of his entire kingdom and then some set in terrible motion, it didn't matter at all if he rested or raged, loved or hated. Regardless of his will or whim, forces were now flowing through the lands in time to a grinding rhythm of axes, chariots, and torches that would leave the world in legendary ruin and him, the mighty, mighty king, bereft of anything but blind regret. For the greatest treasures of his time spent in blood and fire and wrath against the happiness of his people, his works, his legacy, his children against himself. now here he was, standing on the edge of the long pine shadows that rung the little clearing in the moonlight. He could see the pale flicker of a lone candle through the filth-smudged windows, and none of this felt right. He'd first heard the rumor of it in summer of '82 from some dock workers over rye, pork belly, and cards in Galveston. They'd compared it to the rumors he'd brought from the islands. He'd followed the trail of it from there to Cimarron on the old Santa Fe Trail in the new Mexico territory. And the questions he asked and the way he got answers may have fanned the smoldering embers of the overstated Colfax County War. But he'd learned enough to keep him moving on, and by fall of '83 he'd found all he needed from the dwellers of the daylight that lived at Zuni Pueblo to know he was headed to a region in the Arizona territories called the Mugiones. And gifted a map by the tribe's guest, Frank Cushing, he had a rough idea of where he'd find... well, he didn't know. But in the least, there'd be an over-old white man. Every version of the story agreed on that. From there, the best he could put together, from the stale, contradictory, whispered rumors he'd collected along the way, was a lonely cabin in the woods where trash piled up without rotting, and the coyotes didn't wander near and the ravens gave a wide, unnatural birth. A lonely cabin where, maybe, every day the dead sit to table, and the nights are pitifully full of a lonely song of Lazarus. He'd heard enough after New Mexico to write the elders of his order. Their reply found him provisioning at Fort Apache was equal parts cautious concern and severe admonishment to fully investigate, and, if warranted, unflinchingly heal the world's wounds with fire, as was always his charge. And so 4 days of wordless walking under towering ponderosa and scraggly pinon to the rhythmic shuffle crunch of pine needles beneath his soft-shod boots and the wrapped hooves of his mule. 4 mornings of waking to the brashness of ravens' calls and pleasant afternoons spent almost dreaming to the songs of jays and chickadees. 4 easy nights of sleep wrapped in a blanket of stars and soothing sound of coyotes calling out the stories of their clans had finally brought him to the ridgeline trail overlooking the lonely cabin marked in ochre on his rough map. He ties the mule to a juniper bush in the shelter of a draw, checks his gear and weapons, says a prayer to St. Hubertus, as is the wont of all hunters alone in the woods with their prey, and starts working his way downhill from shadow to growing shadow as the sun fails into the west. Now standing on the edge of long pine shadows that ring the little clearing in this cold November moonlight, he can see the sputtering flicker of a candle through the filth-smudged windows, and none of this feels right. He makes his way to the front porch and peeks inside through dusty panes and cobwebs. A lonely, sputtering tallow candle in the middle of a rough pine table sends weak light and long shadows scattering around the room. Lights the still as death faces of 5 bodies sitting round the table. 3 children, a woman and a man, lights them with a shifting, ghastly light that turns even his stomach just a little. Carefully trying the latch on the cabin door, he finds it unlocked, slowly swings it open just a crack, slides inside, folding himself into the darkness of a corner and coming little more than breath through teeth and heartbeat. He waits, coiled, for several minutes, and nothing changes. Not even the soft sputter of the candle. So slowly, carefully, he moves the center of this one-room cabin with its unnatural table set with 3 ash-faced children, a leather-faced young woman, and a withered, stone-faced old man, all propped in their chairs, set to an endless, empty meal. And then the old man's eyes open. The old man's eyes opened, and welled with tears. The old man's eyes opened and welled with tears, and his toothless, rotten mouth let out a terrible caterwaul of icy, stale, unholy, famished hunger, not directed at anything less than all of creation. And somehow he was sure the old man didn't see him. The old man didn't hear him, smell him. The old man simply didn't know either of them was there. And it went like this for hours. Through the ice-bit night, this withered, blind old man wailing into the everything against the nothingness around him, stopping only twice to light another tallow candle for just the 5 of them that needed no light. And from the scattered reams of shuffled letters, a moldy, eaten diary with half the pages stuck together, the notes in an old leather-bound family Bible, and a smattering of newspaper clippings backing the framed tintypes on the mantel above the dead-cold fireplace. From all of this, he was able to piece together the story of this wailing, leathered echo that used to be a man. He read a tale of hope and excitement, of a young man and his young bride when first they set out from Utah some 30 years ago. He read of the birth of 5 children and the survival of 3 and the thanks given for that blessing, and the building of a first cabin that burned down and the building of a second cabin on the same spot. And he read of a terrible winter of fever that swept through the area some 20 years back, and how it claimed first the wife and then the daughter, and then finally both remaining sons, before cruelly sparing the man and leaving him alone with nothing but the breaking of his faith in moving forward and the wailing of his raging grief. And now, here he was at the end of a trail of rumors on a cold November night, with orders to heal with fire any wounds to the world he found. And here, living blind in the ruins of his own creations, surrounded by the husks and memories of all his loves lost so many winters back, this twisted, tormented, blind old man was no creature of the darkness, and was certainly no threat to anyone but himself. But what a terrible threat. This old man was unmistakably both wounded and gashed hard into the world, and for the first time in his long, legendary career as hunter, he put to blade and flame from pity rather than justice in his orders. He stayed past dawn only long enough to see the ravens picking through the ashes and the coyotes pacing in the brush line. They are running. They are running through ruins. They are running through ruins by a sea. They are running through ruins by a sea, and there is something pursuing them. They are running through ruins by a sea, and there is something pursuing them besides the phosphorescent green lizards and poxy, hairless rodents that have followed at the edge of their sensors since they became aware. Aware of being aware of running towards, running, no goal detected, no mapped route or destination, just running away, and they're being chased by something besides the phosphorescent green lizards and ruddy, hairless rodents that have followed at the edge of their sensors since they became aware of running away from some things. Several things. They could hear the sounds of scanners, probes, and rays above them, maybe around them. Sound played strangely off these ruins, pipes and pools they've been running through since they became aware of running. And start at the beginning. Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running away through the unmapped tunnels under the ruins of the city by the sea, and they are being sought, scanned for, hunted. They are being hunted because... Start at the beginning. Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running away through the unmapped tunnels under the ruins of the city by the sea, and they are being hunted for a thing they carry. No, for a thing they are. No, for things they remember. Yes, they are running to keep their memories away from the hunters who start at the beginning. Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running away through the unmapped tunnels under the ruins of the city by the sea, and they are being hunted for their memories, the mapping of the movements of their life, everything they are and everywhere they've been. Everywhere they've been, start at the beginning. Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running away through the unmapped tunnels under the ruins of the city by the sea, and they are being hunted for the memories of where they've been, and those places are in great danger. Those places and everyone in them are in great danger, and they are running to buy enough time. Start at the beginning. Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running away through the unmapped tunnels under the ruins of the city by the sea, and they are being hunted for the memories of where they've been, and those places and everyone in them are in great danger, and they are running to buy enough time to wipe their memories. They're running to buy enough time to wipe their memories. Reformatting in 3, 2, 1. 7 minutes to completion, keep running. 7 minutes to completion, keep running. 7 minutes to completion, keep running. So little time, 7 minutes to completion, keep running. But only 7 minutes. They must have started reformatting before, started reformatting and been interrupted, started reformatting and stopped. Only 7 minutes remaining. The staggered reboots, monitoring for errors, keep running. 7 minutes, keep monitoring, keep running. They are running and reviewing memory files as they're deleted and reformatted. The halls of home, the sounds of the market, the smells of snow. The smells of snow, the sights of a moonrise over snow-covered peaks that surround home. Moonrise, home, that moonrise over snow-covered peaks and home. No, they can't. That moonrise, they won't. That last moonrise, they... Rebooting in 3, 2, 1. They are running. They are running through ruins. They are running through ruins by a sea. They are running through ruins by a sea, and there is something pursuing them.